Okay, hello visionaries. It is October 24th, and this is Android Visionary
Allegedly.
podcast number 5. I'm your host, Marcus Newton, and I'm joined by, can you guys introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Mike Fuller from MikeFullerShow.com.
And I'm Dee from nerdgasmnoir.net.
Great to have you guys on the show. Thanks for coming back again. Um, let's just jump into the news. It hasn't been, I guess, the most, what's the word, like earth-shaking week in terms of Android news. I think pretty much the biggest news has been, maybe coming from the Galaxy S4 sales or maybe, some other smaller news, but it hasn't been anything like a new Nexus or anything. Like last week we got all of our leaks and it was like a little mini Chris for the Android nerd, but this week has been actually kind of quiet.
Hey Marcus, can we talk about Google's downtime today?
Oh, I'm
Oh,
glad I'm
oh
not the
yeah,
only one that dealt with that.
that's a good topic. That's a great topic actually.
Yeah, that made some things happen. This makes me wonder if I really want my Google Voice and my Hangouts and everything all through one company now.
That's
I
Whew,
have a
that was bad.
theory as to why, though, because usually when they're doing big updates or when they're about to release something, something goes wonky with Google.
Yeah, that's true. I thought it coincided with that party that they said they were going to have. I think it was like a Google Play party or something like that.
Is that what it was? I never, every time I hear about those Google problems, I'm either not on the internet when they happen or like I just never experience them. Like I must be like last to get any kind of update, but I think today was like the worst I have ever seen Google. Like I've been there like where you tried to get on and like for like 2 minutes it was like, oh, it doesn't work, something's wrong with Google. But like this was like, whoa, this is like going on and on. Like I'm a little worried now.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
I was trying to use my phone and it kept saying that it couldn't sign me in. Every so often it would show up, we're having a problem signing into Google, and I was like, did I change my password? What happened?
yeah, Mike, I'm so glad you brought this topic up because it just really highlights how we have been really, what's the word? We're just so attached to our devices. We're dependent on them. It's like a dependency. Uh, it's ridiculous. I felt like I was kind of lost for a moment or two. Just I can't get into anything. Nothing's working. I thought my phone was like malfunctioning. I was like, what?
I got lucky because I needed to use Maps really bad, and was noticing some problems, but eventually they kind of worked their way out. But then later in the day, it was nonsense. Like I mean, like she was saying, I was getting Deanna was saying I was getting like the where it said, you can't sign in, can't authorize it, which I've gotten before and I just ignore now. I know that that's not my problem, but but I was getting like my Gmail was acting funny. My Google Voice was the worst today. I've had to text people through like regular SMS, and that's just embarrassing.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
talk to people through my real number. Ugh.
Yeah, and then they're like, "Who's this?" And then there's like the whole you have to do like your code words so they know you're not the other person, and it's just nonsense.
I
it,
am really your friend.
it was
Hang up on me.
it was pretty bad. I mean, really, when you think about it, Google is like your best friend. With Android, Android's so. I realized today how dependent Android is on Google services. Like, just the phone was barely even worth picking up after Google's services went kaput, except some
I
games or
uploaded
whatnot.
100.
It was just. What did you say, Mike? Can you say that again?
I, as a result of Google being down, I followed 120 people on Twitter.
Oh yeah, because you went to Twitter. Oh, that's why you made that post. You had a post like earlier on that said, "Oh, I miss my Twitter community," and I was like, "What? What's he talking about?"
Yeah, I just followed like 120 people. It's crazy in there now, man.
Wow. Okay. So, um, yeah, that was pretty scary. I felt like it was almost like the sky just, you know, things weren't working, and I was like, am I tripping? Like at one point, I was literally like, is something wrong? Like, am I doing something wrong? I checked my internet connection, then I checked, my Verizon connection. I was like, am I doing something wrong? I thought it was me at first. Then I realized, oh snap,
I
it's on all my devices.
You know, I mean, like, I was, like, expecting at least something to tell you, hey, we're having some problems. I had to find out on Twitter, actually.
Right, right, yeah, yeah. I found out from like a couple people, like my Google Plus was still kind of trickling just a little bit, and then a couple people were like, my Google Plus is going crazy, and mine was too. It just wasn't working. Hangouts wasn't working. Nothing was working. Hangout on Air, because I was trying to do a couple of test runs before the show, and then nothing was working. And this was about 6 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, it was pretty scary. Our cloud like almost came crashing to the ground.
Drive seemed to work.
Very scary.
It really
So, in other news, so Samsung is still killing it, pretty much. The Galaxy S4 sold about 40 million devices so far since its release, I guess. What was it? May or late April, I think. So that's awesome. I have a Galaxy S4. It's a great phone. So obviously, Samsung's doing something right. They've got something going. I'm happy for them. You guys have any thoughts on their amazing success? I don't even think any other Android manufacturer comes close to those kinds of numbers.
no. Pretty much, what can you say? It's just like, well, Samsung wins again.
Right, right. And did you guys hear about the story of them posting these like online? They had people post like online comments towards HTC, negative comments on like HTC forums and stuff like this, trying to be, I guess, anti-competitive, like an anti-competitive practice. I think it was I believe it was in a UK court. I think they were just pretty much slapped on the wrist because there's like they only were fined like £340,000 or something like that. But I'm like, Samsung, you're the king of the hill. Why do you need to be that story kind of ticked me off because you're the king of the hill. You don't need to be on HTC. Like they pretty much don't have anything on you at this point.
Yeah, but I think HTC is their biggest competitor.
I think LG is a bigger competitor. LG, and we're going to get to that in the story, LG just posted like a really good quarter. Like, LG is a bigger competitor in the Android space to me than HTC is.
Yeah, I think LG is going to make a comeback here pretty soon. Like right now, Samsung's on top, and if I see anybody actually coming back, it really is LG. I saw a commercial for their phone recently, and it was pretty compelling. For a minute while I was listening to it, I thought they were talking about the iPhone, and then I looked up and I was like, oh, okay, I get what you're doing here. Because I think they've got a new touch thing on theirs too, where it does something with your print or something.
Yeah, I mean, I got to see the LG G2 in person, and it was really nice. Like, the phone is really, really well constructed, and it feels great in the hand, and they decided to go with on-screen buttons, do something different than Samsung for a change. You know, LG's phones have been... The G1 last year was actually a decent phone, the Optimus G1. Of course, this year they dropped the Optimus. It's just the G2. But it's a compelling device, actually. It's pretty good. So
if we could go back to what we were talking about, though, if you heard also, I believe it was, I'm gonna get this wrong now. BlackBerry, yeah, BBM had like a bunch of comments or whatever that were faked, like from their they didn't do it. They have already said they didn't do it, but all these comments were posted that were all fake. Did you hear about that too?
Oh yes, I did. Yeah, I did hear about that. Yeah.
And I think that Leo Laporte made the point today of saying that, you know what, in that case, Samsung should have done what BlackBerry did, just have the marketing company that you're advertising through do that stunt, and then you fire them, and no big deal. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because they just say, oh, we didn't do it. That was our marketing company more than likely. And then you just fire them, and you look like, you did the right thing, when in reality, you set the whole thing up in the first place. It was probably pre-negotiated.
Right. Yeah.
These companies have got to all be doing this. You know what I mean? Like, I got to say, there are some bloggers that obviously are on the payroll of these companies. I mean, Apple, Samsung, everybody. There are definitely bloggers on these payrolls. So at some point, we've got to see past that kind of stuff and just realize everybody's doing that. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, I don't understand. I don't understand. You could just be competitive and make compelling devices, and then, people would buy them. But they're just trying to be. I feel like these bigger companies are just trying to be so shady with the practices sometimes. To sell those devices. It's unfortunate, but and people would make fun in the blogosphere all the time, like, oh, you're being paid by so-and-so. And it's almost like, yeah, well, it's a possibility that you are, so we as the audience have to ask, right? And we hope that you're not.
Yeah, but...
go ahead.
Because you see all these comments and you see all these things on the internet, the way the internet works pretty much is in extremes. So either you get a bunch of people leaving fake positive comments on your app, so that way more people will think it's awesome, or you get a bunch of people posting up terrible comments about your competitors, so they're less likely to buy it. It's just the nature of the internet.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true, Deanna. Well, Samsung, that's what you're doing. Actually, speaking of the competition, the new iPads were announced this week, and I think, Mike, you brought that up last week, that they were, that Google wanted to wait until after the announcement of these new iPads before they started with the Nexus. And, I think that was spot on. I think that was a smart move by them because, of course, a lot of people are talking about the new iPads and whatnot. So the new iPad the iPad has a new name now, the iPad Air. So obviously it's probably a little bit lighter than the outgoing iPad and more powerful, yada, yada, yada. What does this mean for Android tablets? If
I think the iPad's still way overpriced for people that are interested in Android tablets anyway, and the average consumer is going to look at the tablets and say, I'm not paying $300, $400 for a mini tablet when I can get the same thing for $200 and I get all the same stuff. I just don't see that.
Well, it depends, because there's still a lot of people who don't really know Android that well, and all they know is Apple and iPad, so they're still going to get an iPad. That's still going to happen. But
people are still going to get an iPad, and the people that they saw the commercial and they said, I've got to get an iPad, they're going to walk in and ask for an iPad. You're right. But I think a lot of people who are on the fence of that are not going to go that way.
That's true. Anybody who's trying to get a tablet, because a lot of schools are using having kids use tablets and things like that. So a lot of parents who they want to get their kid a tablet for educational purposes, but iPads are really expensive, are probably going to go for like the Nexus 7. And the Nexus 7, they just made it thinner.
Right.
Year, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, the iPad is like, the reason why I like to talk about it on the show is just because they do have they do have a part of like a driving force to moving Android in a good direction. The competition is good because the end consumer is the one who wins, because then Google or Microsoft will try to make their product a little bit better, and then that would drive. So the Nexus now is like the new Nexus 7 is actually a slightly smaller footprint than the old Nexus 7. Like this Nexus is actually just a little bit smaller than the outgoing Nexus that preceded it. So, I do like to see the move in hardware to make things better, because that drives, the competition a little bit more. Okay, I guess we're back. We had some technical difficulties, and of course, unfortunately, we lost a member, but that's okay. We're going to keep going. So let's talk some of the carriers, Deanna, specifically with T-Mobile. I like what T-Mobile is doing. I think T-Mobile is pushing the industry, or trying to push the industry in the right direction. As to whether they will succeed and get the rest of the industry to kind of move over to what they're saying, that's another story. But they have this new program called Unleash the Tablet. And so pretty much how it works is that starting November the 1st, I guess that's next week sometime, next Friday, you can have a tablet, and if your tablet works on T-Mobile's network, as in it's got the right spectrum, the right bands, radios, whatever, you can use their LTE or HSPA Plus network, 200 megabytes for free. The first 200 megabytes for the month, you can use that for free, which is pretty awesome. I mean, 200 megabytes isn't a lot, but I mean, instead of fearing that you're going to have, so much charges on your tablet, you can actually just go out and, you'd only be able to use it sparingly, but I mean, free is free. And so $5 would get you 500 megabytes, but that could only be used in a day. And you can also get like a gigabyte, but that would be spread out over like a week or something like that. So I think that's pretty good. What are your thoughts?
I actually do think that's a pretty good idea. I do think that's a pretty good idea, but at the same time, I feel like it's gonna be a lot of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
How are they gonna? Well, obviously, I'm in my head. I'm thinking, how are they gonna set up how you pay it? There's got to be some sort of warning. Okay, you're reaching the end. Do you want to pay more? And you definitely don't want to leave that around your children, because
right.
There will definitely be a couple of instances of kids accidentally buying more gigabytes, and that bill. Hopefully, the bill won't be too bad with like 1 or 2 gigabytes spread out over a week, but you never know.
Right. I mean, I just like the fact that T-Mobile is giving you the option, instead of only just having postpaid and kind of like the damage is done. Maybe we have to look more into this, but maybe it's going to be like prepaid, and then when you get to the end, it just stops. You just can't use HSPA Plus anymore, or it just gives you like a little bit of a warning. It says, hey, you only have like a certain amount of megabytes left, and then it just stops. Like if it just stopped, then there wouldn't be any problems with kids going overboard, because it would just stop, and they'd be like, oh, Mom, Dad, it stopped, I can't get any internet anymore. Then there wouldn't be no running up of the bills or anything like that. Then the parent could decide, do I want to purchase a little bit more, or do I want to not have any more? But the great thing about the way that the plan works is that if you get like the $10 spread out over a week for a gigabyte, if you wanted to use just like another 500 megabyte or something, you could just purchase $5 and then have it for a day. So, kind of top yourself off as you need it. Like, I like that. You just kind of consume exactly what you need and no more or no less. So
that is a very, very good idea. Hopefully we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, I hope they can implement it well. I hope they can implement it well. So we're rooting for you, T-Mobile. We're rooting for you. Um, Speaking of T-Mobile, I'm just gonna say really quickly, I finished reviewing the Nokia phone. So if you guys check that out on the channel, that would be great. The Nokia N9, I had it for a month, and I was using it with T-Mobile prepaid as well as an overseas provider when I had it in Aruba, and it was really quite good. Um, Unfortunately, with the Android side, it kind of fell off a little bit because not everything works because everything, is hacked onto there. So, but check out the review on the channel and let me know what you think. It's a good phone, solid phone, great hardware. I think Samsung could learn a thing or two from Nokia about good plastics, for example. It's just a shame that Nokia never embraced the Android route. That's what I have to say, because Nokia in the Android game would definitely, it would shake things up, I feel, a little bit, especially if they had a good relationship with the carriers here. It's all about a good relationship with the carriers. So,
Yeah, but
Nokia
Nokia's
N9.
got its own thing, so.
Yeah, yeah. So you can make a great phone, but if you have no relationship with the United States carriers here, your product is pretty much dead on arrival. So. Anyway, the Moto G, we saw a trademark that was used, or I guess filed for, this week. Do we think this is a possible device?
Yeah, most likely. If they're, it's either a device or they're thinking about coming out with a new series of things. A series of devices. So we'll see.
Maybe if it's G, so could
Do
G
you think?
stand for grand or bigger? Do you think it'll be bigger or smaller than the Moto X? Or
That's a good question.
or cheaper or more expensive? Which way do you think it's gonna go, Deanna?
Well, the Moto X is supposed to be the cheaper. Um, what am I trying to say? Uh, what am I trying to say? Accessible. That's not a word.
Accessible. I think you're trying to say like it's easily accessible kind of to the
Easily
general population.
accessible. You can change it to fit your personality. That's what that phone is supposed to be.
Right.
So I don't think they would want to go with any. I think it would probably be more expensive.
Okay.
And if it's going to be more expensive, it's going to be a little bigger or a little sleeker, and it's not going to have as many features as the Moto X is. That's my
Hmm.
theory.
Okay. Okay. My theory is almost the same. I think it's gonna be. I think the G definitely is for a little bit bigger, but I wouldn't say any bigger than like about maybe 5.1 or 5.2 inches at the most.
hmm
And
After that, you get
same,
into phablet territory.
yeah, it's pretty much the phablet territory, but same. It's gonna have the same design aesthetic. Like the Moto X has really really small bezels around around the screen or whatever.
hmm
So even though it's a 4.7-inch device, it feels like it's more like 4.4 or 4.5 inches. Even when compared to like the old Droid Razor, like my wife has the old Droid Razor, and when I compared the Moto X to it, it was awesome because the phone was actually smaller than the Razor in like its the face, but the screen was actually bigger. So it was quite nice. So, and I agree. I think it's going to be more expensive than the Moto X. I think it's going to be sleeker, and hopefully it'll have like more. I'm actually hoping for a little bit of metal, like a little bit of aluminum or something, kind of like with the old Moto Razor, the first Razor, because the first Razor actually was made of metal. Like it had a lot of metal in it actually. So that's what I'm hoping for. And as to the amount of features, I think it'll have either the same amount of features or a couple more features that the Moto X doesn't have currently. But as to what those features would be, I have no idea. So
Fingerprint. Well, no, does the Moto X have fingerprint?
No, it
No, it
doesn't.
doesn't. It'll be the fingerprint. It'll be their slightly more upscale Moto brand phone.
And with the Moto X, because the Moto X has just like kind of like the LG, it's got that little dimple on the back, just like the LG phone where you have the controls on the back. And there's like a little dimple with the Motorola logo. And what I wish is that they had come out with the fingerprint scanner to scan your index finger back there before the iPhone had come out with it. Like, instead of the Moto symbol being back there, it would have been a fingerprint scanner. I wish they would have done something like that, but obviously the design wasn't made for that. But I wish they had done that so that somebody could have been like, oh, we released a fingerprint scanner before Apple recently.
Before Apple did.
Right.
Somebody
But recently,
before
like
Apple.
not 2 years ago, like the original Atrix, like
Mhm.
recently. So, but yeah, now that Apple's done it, unfortunately, there's going to be like a ton of people doing it, and I don't know. I just
Before they're gonna come out with it now, even if they were still sort of kind of perfecting it, they're just gonna
right.
come out with it now because Apple did it. So they got to get there while they can.
Ugh. Something different. I hope to see something different, but unfortunately, that's not usually the case. But anyway, what else could they do? I don't know. I don't know what else they could do on the hardware side, to be honest, other than like it being like a mini Star Trek scanner.
The medical scanners?
Yeah.
They're trying to come out with those. I think a couple months ago they said that somebody was working on something like that. We'll see. They've
Well,
already made lightsabers on accident.
well, I don't know. I don't know what else they can cram into these phones. That's what I'm
Every
saying.
time they cram something new into it, it's always something that you should like. You're like, why didn't I think of that? I didn't realize I needed this until it was there. Like camera phones were amazing, and you were like, nobody ever thought I'm gonna put a camera on my phone.
Right, right,
You were like, oh, this is so convenient. And then they started doing the barcode scanners, and then they started doing the smartphones with the internet, and this, that, and the other. And then it's things that you didn't even realize that you needed until you had them.
right. You know what? You know what, Deanna? If Apple was to put one thing in their phones, which they don't have currently, and which would just solidify this being in every single phone and every single device, it's NFC. That's the one thing that they don't have in their devices, and it gets me so angry because I think NFC is a great technology, and maybe it's not the best for mobile payments. So, maybe we could go a different route for mobile payments. But if Apple adopted NFC, you would see so many more people adopt it, so many more uses for it. Just the amount of things you hear about and see for NFC would be like mind blowing if Apple were to employ it, and they don't for whatever reason.
Even using it just to like exchange pictures and files and things, I love it to death because it's just like, here, I just put my phone near yours, give it a
Right,
second, and
right,
now it's on your phone.
right. Yeah. So, and we don't need anything like bump where there's like GPS positioning and all this stuff with Bluetooth to try to pinpoint, oh, did you actually just bump your phone? No, NFC just works, and it's low power too. I wish they would put that, and I wish as well they wouldn't be so closed with things like that, because if I wanted to exchange information with an iPhone user and they made the NFC standard kind of, like a standard almost, then I could touch the back of an iPhone and then just get their contact information. They could get mine like really quickly. But as it stands now, you can't do that. So,
Well, Apple's whole big thing is they've been saying forever that they keep their stuff closed so that way they can make their stuff work the best, and it keeps it safe, and it keeps, like for the longest time everybody's like, Apple computers don't get viruses. Well, they do, but they don't get as many as a Microsoft computer or what have you.
Right.
Because Apple stuff only works on Apple stuff, only works with Apple stuff, only connects to Apple stuff. So you can still get a virus, but it's less likely because it's so closed off. That's good as far as protection for your computer, things like that, but at the same time, there's a whole lot of other stuff, like you said, that you're missing out on. I can't get your contact information from you really quick because we can't NFC. You have to, like, email me or text me whatever information. Who wants to do that?
Right.
Who sends email anymore?
Right. I totally agree. But that is Apple. So next month, there's a new Samsung, of course, another Galaxy to pump up their sales stats and revenue. The Galaxy S4 Mini is coming to the United States. I'm underwhelmed for a couple of reasons with this device. I like the 4.3-inch form factor. With the Nokia having that smaller phone again was kind of nice. But I'm underwhelmed with the fact that its display is only 960 by 540 as opposed to 1280 by 720. It's not 720p. It just feels like all these Android manufacturers, they have the smaller the device, the kind of cheaper they go. Either they cheap out on the processor, or they cheap out on the screen, or they cheap out on the camera. It's not the worst phone in the world. Like, it's got a dual-core processor, but the better phones that run Android today are all quad-core. And it would definitely help if this type of phone was quad-core too, because it would kind of help future-proof it a little bit, so that when KitKat and Beyond comes out,
you'll be able to get those instead of having.
Right. You'll be able to get it, and your device won't suck after you get it. Like that's the big problem. It's fine to have Jelly Bean running on your old HTC Evo, for example. It's just that because its hardware is not so good, it's just not going to run very well. So if the hardware is better, and a good example of this is the old Galaxy S2. I mean, the Galaxy S2 started off with gingerbread.
Mm-hmm.
Then it went to ice cream sandwich. Then it went to Jelly Bean, like a couple versions of Jelly Bean, and it was still pretty usable. But that's because in 2011, when they first came out with it, it had really, really high-end specs. So it stayed, relevant longer. Mm-hmm. So I feel like this Galaxy S4 Mini is just, it's just to say, oh, we have a slightly different form factor, and they kind of want to, it's almost like a disposable phone. Like, after your year or so contract, you're not going to want to update this thing because it's just going to be too slow. So, which is sad. So, but that's what they want to do. So, hey, power to them.
Like you said, it gets you to get another phone in a year or two or whatever.
Yeah. So I just wish that they would have made this a quad-core, first of all, with the same chipset as what's in the Galaxy S4. It should be exactly the same chipset, and it should be at least 1280 by 720p. It should be a 720p display on that 4.3-inch. Now, the 8-megapixel camera, again, the software has a lot to do with that. If they do the right software, then it would be good. To make, to have good pictures. So I'm not so worried about the 8-megapixel camera, although maybe 10 or 13 might be nice. But, if you're just going to take Instagram pictures anyway, then it's probably not the worst thing in the world. And, 2 gigabytes of RAM might have been nice as well. But 1.5, that would probably still have worked. But 2 gigabytes would have been great. Even in a device like that, I could have wholeheartedly recommended that to anybody, So, but anyhow, let's go on to their copycat cousin in Korea, LG. The LG Flex, that was that curved phone like we were talking about last week that had the, kind of looked like a banana. It actually looks pretty good. It's got a curve, but it's not. it's almost like they purposefully made it so that it wasn't too curved. It's like it's got like a slight curve
Right.
on it, and that works.
Very
That's
subtle.
actually not terrible. And it
Yeah,
looked really good.
I was thinking that when I saw it too. It's a very subtle curve, so it doesn't look so breakable.
Right.
So it's actually pretty nice looking.
Right, right. I think it looks much better than the Samsung Galaxy Round. Like the Galaxy Round just
It looked like
oh
a folded. It looked like when you read a
yeah,
book too much and it folds. It looked like that.
yeah, yeah. Just it was so bad.
Extremely breakable. I'm still worried. I'm just in my head. I just see that screen cracking, just all
Yeah.
the way across. It's so bad.
Right. Whereas the LG Flex, I mean, I could see it possibly could crack again, but I don't think it would be like the Galaxy Round because it's not as curvaceous, if that makes any sense. It's like it's got a slight curve as opposed to like a massive curve. So I like the LG Flex. It actually looks good. Now, if they could make one in 5 inches, maybe I'd be game. Because right now it's too massive. At 6 inches, it's massive. Like the pictures of it, it's huge. Beside like a normal sized phone, I was like, wait a second, that's a normal sized phone beside it, and it's making it look small.
Yeah, yeah, it's too big, but well, maybe they'll release it as a phablet. I'm sorry, I think the word phablet is so funny.
It's because it is funny.
I find that new genre of between phone and tablet to be interesting. There's there's tablets, mini tablets, phablets, and phones. I
Right.
find it hilarious. I'm sorry.
Right. That's exactly what it is.
But yeah, it's definitely it's a little too big.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think the 5-inch phones, like even I would probably still get it because I love the phones with big screens. But even like I think for the average person, the 5-inch phone is like as big as you want to get.
Right. Right. I agree. I agree.
It's a very, very pretty phone. I'm so glad that curve is not ridiculous.
Yeah. Yes, I concur. I concur. And LG Mobile is just doing so well as well. Like they posted some pretty awesome revenues. They posted like 2.78 billion US in mobile revenue, and they shipped 12 million phones. I'm sure a lot of those were probably G2s as well as other phones, I'm sure. And their division posted a revenue of about 2.75 billion for quarter 3, which is 24% over what they were last year. And I know that this is definitely because they're just making better phones now. I think the quality of LG's phones has stepped up a notch or two.
Extremely better. LG phones used to not be great.
No,
And then
they weren't.
And then also having Android on them because their user interface wasn't really that good either.
Right.
So
Right.
having Android on there helps because you're making better phones, and then also you don't have the crappy, confusing user interface. So
Right. Although, if I could say, I don't like the current skin that LG has on there. I think there's too much. I think it's a little bit cluttered and it's too busy. But the phone is so fast, Deanna. The phone is so, like, its processor and everything is so ridiculously quick that even though it's crammed like 100 features in there, much like the Korean cousin Samsung, it can handle it because it's such a beast. And so it like overcomes the fact that it's too much with brute force. So
with being good at what it does, yeah.
it works. I mean, I have to admit, it works. The LG G2 is a beautiful phone. The screen is gorgeous. Like, the screen is just awesome. But the features that it has, sometimes the interface feels a little clunky, especially when you pull down the notification shade. I find the notification shade is the most obtrusive thing, like, just ever. I mean, like, this notification shade is just stock, but the way that their notification shade is that they have like a volume toggle like up here, and then they've got like the Q slide up there, and then the brightness is right there, and none of these things you can remove. They just like sit there in your notification shade all the
It's
time.
like with the S3, how it has that. Well, I think you can remove that on the S3 though.
I think you can. I think you can too. All these things on
The LG phone, they're just stuck.
It's ridiculous. So I think LG has a little bit of work to do still with their UI, but I love the hardware. If you can manage to get, Hack CyanogenMod on it or any other ROM that does away with most of that stuff, you can have a really, really great, stock device. But again, that's not for everybody. But if you're into that, it's really, really good because the hardware is actually good. So let's jump into some of the news stories. So BBM is back. Now, we didn't talk about BBM last week. Some people thought, oh, we don't want to talk about BBM. Another one of the members on the show didn't want to talk about BBM. But I have to talk about it now because it's so popular. And a couple of my friends on Facebook had their pins, and I started to get jealous. So I tried and tried to get onto it yesterday, and it just wasn't having it. I could not get on yesterday, but I got my invite today, so I was pretty happy about that. Did you manage to get onto it, Deanna? I know we tried to do.
I tried the hacks. It didn't work, so I just put my email address. I'm still waiting for the email. I got people. Somebody sent me their pin for it today, and I was just like, seriously, really? I was so frustrated. I was like, I didn't even want this at first, and now everybody's on it, and I wanted it, and now I don't want it anymore. I'm frustrated. But apparently, it's really popular. I'm gonna have to play with it to see why, because I am also one of those people who's like, but why? But we'll see.
It came out on Monday, and it got over 1 million downloads in one day on the Android store. And this is not counting iOS, right? Because it's on both iOS and Android. Now, what BlackBerry is saying today is that with everybody, it's up to today, it's like 10 million people in 4 days. That's pretty good. It clearly BBM still has a place in a lot of people's hearts. That's what this tells me is that when BBM was working well and when BlackBerry was on top, everybody liked it a lot. So, and they remember it very fondly. And so, I'm going to try it out, and hopefully, I'll see some people that I actually want to talk to on there as well.
So that way you can get out of it.
That's the other thing, because, not a lot of people have it that I know of, and most people are still stuck on, like, WhatsApp or Viber or, Kik or something, all those other ones. But we'll see. I'm excited because the app looks really good. Like, I went through it, and it's really quite seamless, and it seems to work pretty quickly. So it seems like it's a pretty good app. I'm just hoping that more people will try it out and then add me, and we can chat or whatever. So BBM is back. I'm happy for them. They need a break.
BlackBerry needs something, anything.
Yeah. It's a shame, though, Deanna, to be honest, that they did not come out with this about 2 years ago.
Well, because they were still trying to pull the BlackBerry phones out of the muck.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all know how that turned out. The Z10 was written down, I think, for $1 billion. I think they had to write off $1 billion worth of Z10. So basically, for our audience, they made all these Z10s and thought they were going to sell them all, and they didn't. And so they had to take them at a loss, which equaled $1 billion. 1 billion with a B. That's huge. Yeah. Yeah. So, BBM, it's like a little bright light in what is otherwise a very gloomy world for BlackBerry right now. So, wish you well, BlackBerry. We need the competition because it makes Android stronger. So, Let's talk about some apps. So Plants vs. Zombies. So there was quite a few good apps that have come into the store this week, and one of them, of course, was Plants vs. Zombies 2. That one just came into the Play Store. I don't know if you had a chance to try it, Deanna, but I like the first Plants vs. Zombies, and this Plants vs. Zombies 2 is just, it's definitely graphical improvement, and I think they've got some new units and stuff. So it's free, and it's a very well-made game, very, very well-made game. So if you guys get a chance, go check it out in the Play Store. It's pretty good. Did you have a chance to try that particular game out by any chance?
No, I didn't, and I wanted to because I am probably the only person in the world who's never played Plants vs. Zombies. That's the one game, the one casual game that skipped me, and I keep hearing people talk about it, and then I saw that today that there was like a Plants vs. Zombies 2, and I was like, oh, I have to get the chance. So probably right after the show I'm going to download it, and that's what I'm going to be up all night doing.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I played it for a little while. I had to stop myself from getting sucked in, so I know exactly what you mean.
I get so addicted to those games.
There's a new Google Play app as well. I don't think it's rolled out to everybody. It just changes a little bit of the UI. So you have the slide out on the side. You have the slide out menu. And I think that's the biggest change of all. Maybe there's some things in the background that it's also changing. But there's a new Google Play app, so you can go and download it. It should automatically come to you. Those are the types of apps like the Google Play app and Google Play services. Those apps will automatically get updated in the background. But for those of you who are very adventurous and want to try and get it yourself, you can just pretty much Google Play APK, the app, and I believe it's version 4.4 now. So if you Google that, you'll be able to find the new Google Play app and try it out. I don't know if they do any type of additions with like downloading or anything like that, but I think it's just a graphical user overhaul. So it looks pretty good. And there's now this new app for Aereo TV. Have you ever heard of that Aereo app or
No.
Aereo, the TV station service?
No, I haven't.
So basically, I think how it works is this company Aereo has a building somewhere, and they have a lot of antennas attached to their building, and these antennas pick up, the waves for different TV broadcasts and channels and whatnot. And what they do is they allow you to rent out one of their antennas, and then they rebroadcast, or kind of the way that they do it is maybe like streaming or something, and they stream it to you online from their tower, I guess.
Wow.
So then you can pay a lot less for your TV because they're just getting TV over the air and then just kind of sending it to you, I guess. And of course, obviously, this has a lot of TV networks up in arms, cable companies up in arms, because I could pay $6 or $7 and get, my CBS, my NBC, or my ABC or whatever from them, because all they're doing is they're just picking it up from the airwaves and then just sending it to you online. But technically it's your antenna because you're renting it from them. As you're watching it, whatever broadcast you're watching, it's your antenna because you're renting it from them when you watch. That's how I think they're getting around the loophole.
Yeah, I was going to say because it's not really a rebroadcast.
Right, it's not really a rebroadcast, right? That's how it is. It's only now, too bad it's not here in Baltimore. It's limited to the following cities: New York, Boston, Atlanta, Miami, Salt Lake City, Houston, and Dallas. So unfortunately, those are the only cities where you can get Aereo, so the TV app will only work if you have a subscription to Aereo already. So that's how it works. But I mean, I wish to blow the door wide open on this, because really there's no reason that we should not have TV on our phones. Like, there's no reason that I should have to go to a specific screen in my house just to get TV. Like, TV should really be everywhere. It's just these
Cable
greedy
companies
corporate executives and sharekholders just
They're
want TV to
fighting
be in
it.
certain places.
They're fighting it. That's why HBO. That's why no matter how hard, because every 6 months, HBO goes, okay, well, we think we're gonna just make HBO Go like subscription only, so you can pay a certain amount of money a month, and you can have HBO Go. You don't have to watch it on the TV. You could just watch it on your tablet if you have the internet, or you could watch it on your Xbox if you have the internet, or whatever. And they say it all the time, and then all the time they go, oh, we can't. And most likely the reason that they can't is because cable companies are like, no, this is how we get our, especially HBO, because Game of Thrones makes them so much money.
I know. I'd
So much
imagine.
money. So they can't possibly. It's
It's such a sad,
fighting the internet so hard.
so
So hard.
sad. So sad these guys want to be so greedy. They would love nothing. These TV execs would love nothing more than to be able to control more on the internet as to how you watch things and how you pay for it. They'd love nothing more than that.
Because they want it to be like someone was saying that the Nielsen ratings. Actually, they've been saying this for a couple of years now, that like Nielsen ratings aren't really accurate because people are now TiVoing things, DVRing things. So, and then the way that they track ratings is they don't track, or I'm sorry, the way that they track viewers is, I don't know if they've updated it, but as far back as a year ago, they didn't track people who were watching from a DVR or from a TiVo. They were only tracking if you were watching live. That was it.
Right.
And so we live in an age now where people are DVRing everything and then just watching it later. So there are so many people who probably were watching particular shows, and those shows got canceled because they weren't counting the DVR watches.
Right. Right.
TV's got to catch up to the rest of technology. They just do.
They do. They're just stuck because the model for what used to be strong revenue for TV worked for so long. Like it's worked for a long, long time. And so now that it's that resistance to change because A, they can't make as much money off of like things broadcast online, and B, things broadcast online is just they're just less restricted. As soon as somebody shares something somewhere else, it's
shared
in that
everywhere.
place. It's shared. So you can't. There's no way to make money on that unless somebody in the communications universe, the FCC, does something stupid like making you pay for certain amounts of bandwidth and certain types of bandwidth. If they do something like that, then they will be able to make money, because if I'm sending an email online, it might not cost me anything, but as soon as I start to stream something, then it might cost more if I'm streaming from a certain company like NBC, for example, and then they want to charge me like $5 for every time I connect to their website or something, then they might start to make just as much money as now. In other words, if the internet gets segmented, if it's not like free and open as it is now, if for whatever reason they charge for certain access to certain sites, then you'd see the same thing that we have now, pretty much. Because in order to get a show from ABC that's like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., for example, which I'm keeping up with, by the way, Deanna, I am keeping up with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I'm glad someone is.
But
That show is
ABC,
so
we'd have to pay to get to see Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? We'd have to pay ABC to get to their site to watch it, for example. But
Like
then
when
if you
switch
want to
cable
watch
companies,
something
they
on
have-
NBC, then you'd have to pay again to get, So it would be just like TV is kind of now. Well, not quite like TV is now. But if you wanted to pay for, if they segmented the internet like that, then you have to pay for like everything to connect to, which would be just horrible.
It would be terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, it'd be terrible. And the
So much
problem
more
is,
pirating. So much more pirating.
right. And the problem is that the more you consume, the more you'd have to pay. Whereas right now, some people who don't watch a lot of TV are still paying the same amount as a person who watches a lot of TV. So, and that's how I guess they've balanced it out over the years. But and that's actually a great segue into our next topic, that YouTube is to launch their own kind of subscription music service. Now, it's not exactly T like we were talking about, but it's music instead, because I don't think that the YouTube those YouTube subscription to their certain channels, like premium channels,
Hmm.
I don't think that's really catching on too much.
I don't think so either. I think the music idea is better though, because a lot of people, especially teenagers and younger people, they do listen to a lot of music on YouTube. Especially now that you can make playlists and things like, or video playlists and things
Right.
like that.
I mean,
So,
I listen to a lot of music on YouTube too, and I mean, I'm definitely not as young as I used to be. So,
I
but
personally don't listen to a lot of music on YouTube unless it's like a specific YouTube artist. Like I like the Mike Thompson videos. So I always go and I watch his videos on YouTube instead of like listening to the song on Spotify, because I think actually they get more money when you go to YouTube.
I
I don't
see.
know I don't know exactly how much they get from Spotify, but I'm pretty sure that YouTube actually gives them more. But
I see.
I'll do that. I'll listen if it's like a YouTube specific artist or whatever. But as far as like stuff that I would hear on the radio or like music that, you would have on like a CD or anything like a major label kind of thing, that I just use Google Play Music for.
Okay, okay. And for us, for people like us who already have Google Music, this isn't so wonderful. But if you were to get something like this, how much would you be willing to pay for it?
I think they should keep it low because they are going to be competing with Spotify because everybody loves Spotify. I don't
Right.
like Spotify so much, but I think I don't like Spotify because it was too much like uh the the iTunes interface, and me and iTunes don't get along. But they would have to keep it around like $7.99, $6.99, anywhere between 5 and 8. I think they would be good. But
Right.
if they get over that, if they try and go with Spotify at 10, I don't think they're going to do so well.
Right, right. And again, it just comes down to the association, like the industry association for America, the RIAA. They control a lot of the rates that Google has to charge us as the end consumer, that they don't really necessarily Google, they don't have control over, unfortunately, which is why some of those prices are kind of the way that they are. I know that it has a lot to do with these royalties and the big studios like Universal and Sony. Then they control so much. So I think that's part of the problem why Google would love to charge like $2 and just
think-
have everything else subsidized, of course, by search and the
I
ads.
think
But they can't.
people learned from the Google Books fiasco. Remember when they were
Yeah.
trying to scan every book in existence?
Yeah,
available.
that's a good. Yeah, that's true.
And everyone was just like, that's not going to work. And I think they learned from that. And so Google is really good with playing by the rules where they have to try, and then trying to make it up somewhere else.
Right.
So they learned from the Google Books fiasco. They learned that they can't do these things even though they may want to. And so they try and make up for it somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that if you do decide to subscribe to the YouTube subscription, like music subscription, that it will work on this as well. There is no point, absolutely no point, let's bring it back to Android, no point in having a YouTube subscription for music that only works at my desktop. That is absolutely insane. That is crazy. Because so much of our consumption is on the go. So it needs to work on your phone, it needs to work on your tablet, it needs to work pretty much everywhere. So, and on your computer screen, and on my Chromecast, for example. It needs to work on everything. It can't be, I think it'll be dead on arrival if it just works, say, for example, on like maybe only your Chromecast and only your computer, but not any of your Android devices. I don't think that's going to do well at all.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, they can't limit it. So we'll see how they do with that. Okay, so we're gonna jump to the app recommendations. My app recommendation for the week is Switcher. It's a new app that allows you to switch, I guess, it's like a multitasking app, but it's a little bit different in the way that it's implemented. It is not quite like your multitasking button. If I could just demonstrate it here. It's not like your multitasking button where you just press the button and then you get all the different apps that you've got running at a given time and you can just tap on one. It's actually, you can set an area of the screen and then you just pull out from that area of the screen and then it just switches, it switches back and forth, and you can just switch to anything like that, and then you just let off and then it switches to that particular app. So it's a pretty nice app. I like it a lot. I think it's a good, this is just a free version, so it's only limited to my latest 5 apps. But in the Play Store right now, it's going for 99 cents. I think it'll go up to $1.99 after the initial sale or whatever. But it's a pretty cool app for those people who are like into swiping a lot, or if you don't have a multitasking button on your phone, because most people don't have like Nexus phones or something like that. So this would be very useful for people who have like a menu button, like Samsung, I'm looking at you, or LG, and those who don't even have a menu button, I'm looking at you, HTC, nor a tasking button. So I think Switcher is a pretty cool app. It's 99 cents in Play Store, and there's a free version to try it out, so might be worth your time. Do you have an app, Deanna, for the week?
I do. This app, I got it a while ago. I love camera apps, especially camera apps that do really goofy things. So I have an app on here called Paper Camera. It's about, I think it was $2.99. Paper Camera is so fun. I like Paper Camera because you can do videos, you can do pictures, you can modify pictures that you've already taken. So one of the things that I was doing for a while is I love my dog so much, I made a little comic of my dog where I took pictures of him with a camera, and then I put the pictures on my tablet, and then I comic boomed them, and then I just Dropbox them back onto my computer. I made little comics of my dog.
Nice.
But it takes video, it does all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I believe it's about $2.99 on the Play Store. It's super fun, and all of the little filters and things are really cool. They have the comic book one, they have the sketch one, they have one that makes you look like you're in an old 1950s noir detective movie. It's really cool. I love it.
How much was it again?
I believe it was $2.99.
Okay, $2.99. Awesome. Sounds great. Good choice. Yeah, I have Paper Camera as well. It's pretty good. I haven't used it in a while. Now I think I'm gonna try and use it a couple times now. Now that you said something about it.
Goofy stuff on it.
Awesome. Well, I think that just about does it for the show this week. Any story that you wanted to talk about, or anything that jumped out at you, Deanna?
No, I think you're right that they're going to be announcing the Nexus 5 next week, especially because they had that little mix-up. I don't know if it was before the last episode or after the last episode, but they had that little mix-up where it was in the Play Store for like 2 seconds.
Right. Yeah, it was like I think it was just after the podcast. Just after the podcast last week, they had that little leak.
So they're definitely gotta be next week sometime. Probably
Yeah,
next
Nexus
month.
5,
So,
and the leak was pretty. I thought it was pretty much spot on. It was 350 for the 16 gigabyte. So, and there were rumors that there would be a 16 and 32. So, here's to hoping that the 32
Please
gigabyte comes in about $399.
please let there be a 32. That's one of the reasons why I didn't get the Nexus 4, because the highest it came in was 16, and my little Galaxy Nexus is 32. I'm not going down, you guys.
I know,
I'm not
I
going
know.
down.
I totally agree with you. I can't go back. Don't take me back to those days. And as soon as you start taking pictures or doing like a lot of video on your phone, it just tears through that 16 gigabytes. Like,
And then when apps start upgrading and all kinds of
Right.
stuff, it eats it all up. Like the new Nexus 7, they got them in 32 gigabytes. I'm saving up for one. I'm getting a new Nexus 7. I'm gonna get the Nexus 5 in 32 gigabytes if they have it. So.
yeah, I think they will have it in 32 gigabytes. I hope they do. The Nexus 7 in 32 gigabytes is great. That's the version I have. I mean, 32 gigabytes really should be the de facto. Like, I don't think they should make any more phones with just 16, but again, that's another rant for a different episode.
I feel like, yeah, right. Like 8 is just really, you're just being mean. You're just being mean.
8 is like you're trolling, kind of, and it's not even like 2 gigabytes of system and then 8 gigabytes for data. They just clump everything into 8, and it's like 5 gigabytes for data. It's like, it's horrible. It's so bad. But anyway. Anyhow, if you want to get in contact with myself, you can email me, marcus@androidvisionary.com, and you can find me on Google+. Just look up Android Visionary. Where can everybody find you, Deanna?
You can find me on Twitter @NaniCoolJ, and you can find me on Google+ as well. Actually, if you look up NaniCoolJ, you'll be able to find it, but if you look up Deanna Jones, I'm right there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you once again for coming on the show. As always, great to have you. Thank you to whoever views this. If you're viewing live or you view later, thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you again next week. And hopefully we'll have some Nexus news to be able to tell everybody and talk about in next week's episode. Until then, take care. Bye, Visionaries.